friends, this is Jennifer Terry and welcome to my channel. So this video is like a repeat to my last video, only that this is focused for foreign nationals. In this video I will also speak in English only because I've received quite comments on my last video saying they couldn't understand and they wanted to be in English. I also received an email, so I realized, yeah, why not make the video again and make it solely just for foreign nationals. Let's start. Going home to the Philippines or going to the Philippines for a vacation, here's what you can expect. So this video will be divided in sections. The first one will be arrival process, including travel requirements. Next will be quarantine, domestic travel, life in the Philippines, domestic tourism, and COVID situation. Now let's start. Let's start with travel requirements. There are travel requirements. Since this is pandemic time, this is not the same like before. There's gonna be requirements. You can't just turn up in the Philippines like before and then get a visa. That's not how it is anymore. And before I even go further, let me give you a clear note that foreign tourists are still not allowed. Only those who are immediate families of Filipinos or former Filipinos and holders of certain long-term visas are allowed. However, if you are a foreign tourist who really want to go to the Philippines and you're just waiting for them to lift the ban, this video would also be helpful for you, to give you an idea on the requirements and arrival process and stuff like that in the Philippines. So you still can get information here. Okay, so let's go back. Travel requirements. Let's start with foreign spouse or children regardless of age of Filipinos or former Filipinos traveling together. As we know, December 7, yesterday or today, whenever I'm gonna upload this video, Balikbayan visa has returned, visa-free privilege has returned, but only for families of Filipinos or former Filipinos. So what do they need if they are traveling together with their Filipino family member, like spouse or parent? Well, they're gonna need their foreign passport, their authentic marriage certificate or authentic birth certificate. Next is a pre-booked COVID test plus quarantine hotel. And next would be a Trace app QR code. This one, so for these pre-booked COVID test and quarantine hotel and Trace app QR code, you can do this online. You can do this on your phone. And for the pre-booking of COVID test and quarantine hotel, I made a whole video about that. So check that video if you are traveling to the Philippines soon. Now let's keep going. For foreign spouses or children of Filipinos not traveling together, it means that they will not be able to avail the free visa upon arrival, the visa-free privilege. It means they will need to apply for a visa prior to their entry to the Philippines. So the first requirement, of course, the visa, your foreign passport, which should be valid at least 6 months, and then authentic marriage certificate or birth certificate if you're a child. Next is a pre-booked COVID test plus quarantine hotel and the Trace app QR code. Now with this Trace app QR code, there's been many bad reviews about this. Like for example, I tried downloading it but I couldn't download. It said it's not available in your country. So, and also if you have an iOS lower than 13, if you're an Apple user, you might find difficult to download this. So there is the site, the Trace app website actually allows you to download the APK file itself, so you can download it. I'll put the link in the description box. And a video for the pre-booking of COVID test plus quarantine hotel, I put it in the description box as well. Or you may as well check my channel and subscribe. Let's keep going. Now, if you're a foreign national with an eligible long-term visa, visas, if you have any of these, you can enter the Philippines, but you still need travel requirements, of course. The first one would be your visa, and then which has to be valid, and then a foreign passport, which is at least 6 months valid, and then your pre-booked COVID test and your quarantine hotel, and lastly your Trace app QR code. With this Trace app, everyone has to have it. Everyone, even children. Now you have the travel requirements. Let's travel. Let's go to the Philippines now. Now, also one thing I want to stress out is negative COVID test result is not a requirement to enter the Philippines because testing will be done upon your arrival. However, if your airline or your transiting countries requires you to have it, then you'll have to undergo PCR test prior to your travel. But again, the Philippine government does not require a negative COVID test result prior to travel. So get in touch with your airline, or yeah, your airline should tell you if you need a COVID test. Now let's go. And also, there is limited international airports open for international arrivals in the Philippines. So only these 3 airports are open for international arrivals. So first one is of course NAIA, the one in Manila. Next one is Mactan, Cebu. And lastly is Clark, Pampanga Airport. That's it. You can't land anywhere else if you're coming from overseas. And also connecting flights, let's say you're coming from New York, Manila to Cebu. If you arrive in Manila first, then you have to test and quarantine there. Okay? Or whether you have a flight Los Angeles to Cebu to Manila, you'll have to test and quarantine in Cebu. So the first place, that's where you're gonna do the test and quarantine. Let's keep going. Now when you arrive in the Philippines, again, test and quarantine. Test is mandatory for everyone of almost any ages. Yeah, children, seniors, pregnant, foreign national, Filipino, you'll be tested. That is the RT-PCR COVID test, which is the gold standard test. So through your nose and through your mouth. Everything will be shouldered by yours. So the government will not pay for you. Now, the COVID test, the prices varies. So there are 2 options for you. If you are a passenger of a Philippine Airlines or you are flying with Philippine Airlines, they have their own laboratory. So the cost for that is 4,000 pesos. Now, if you are flying with a different airline, you can choose RedCross or more commonly, Philippine Diagnostic Lab or PADLab. So PADLab is more common, it's more popular because RedCross caters more to overseas Filipino workers. Yeah, so PADLab is more for foreign nationals and Filipinos who are not OFWs. Now, how much is the COVID test? Again, it depends on where you get it and how long you want to wait for. So if you are availing the service of RedCross, that would be 4,000. And if you're availing the service of Philippine Airlines, you're a passenger of Philippine Airlines, and you can avail 4,000. And lastly is PADLab. If you're not flying with Philippine Airlines, this is gonna be your laboratory. Now, and you can choose to either pay by card, by cash, by credit card or debit card, and yeah, they also accept GCash. Now you might be thinking, oh wait, before I proceed, about quarantine hotels. So after you do your test, of course, you have to quarantine. Now the quarantine, how long? 1 to 2 days. For some people, they only availed 4,000 for the 4,000 COVID test service, and they received their result less than 24 hours. They're pretty good, this PADLab. So far, they're getting good reviews, and so the hotel quarantine is just between 1 to 2 days. And if you're doing hotel quarantine, it has to be a quarantine that is accredited by the Philippine government. You can't choose any hotel you like. It has to be on this list. I'll put this link in the description box. Now, Let's talk about money. With the test and quarantine, that's all your expense. How much do you need? For the COVID test, so that's like $85, 4,000 pesos. And for your transfer from the airport to the hotel, that's your own cost as well. So pickups are not available, are not permitted. So your choices would be an airport shuttle or van, or a hotel transfer. So if your hotel offers this service, they could pick you up at the airport. And there are also metered coupon taxis at the airport. So that's your only three options: your hotel service, your airport shuttle vans, or metered coupon taxis. So for that, let's say $15. And then there's hotel, which really depends if you want a fancy one or just a basic hotel. It's really up to you. If you want a fancy one, there's 10,000 pesos a night. If you want a very basic, affordable one, there's even 1,200, 1,500 pesos. There's 2,400, which includes meals, which is great. You don't have to think about anything. And if your hotel doesn't have food, like prepare 1,500 pesos. That should be enough. Now, so total is, my estimate how much you need money is, prepare at least 10,000 pesos. It could be more or it could be less. It's really up to your choices and preferences. When you receive your negative result, you receive it on your email. Once you have that, you just tell your hotel reception and that's it. You're finished. You're free. You're free to go. You can go outside. You're lucky if, like, let's say you land in Manila and your final destination is just in Manila, so it's easy for you to go home. You can be picked up by relatives or friends or a private vehicle, or you can also catch public transport. It's up to you, because since you have your negative COVID test, you are free. However, if you are somebody, let's say you have landed in Manila and your final destination is actually Cebu or Davao or Jensan or Cotabato or Leyte, then you'll have to catch a domestic flight. For that, there's going to be another travel requirement. So there are domestic flight travel requirements. So usually, of course, the first one would be your negative COVID test, and you already have that, so that's easy. Next would be a certificate of quarantine issued by the Bureau of Quarantine, which you can also get online. So you can ask for help from your hotel reception and they will guide you for that. So that's easy as well. And last one would be a travel authority. This is not a requirement for all provinces, but many provinces require this. This travel authority, you can get this from the police station. So from your quarantine hotel, you just ask the hotel reception which is the closest police station. Let's go. You can also check the website of the Philippine Airlines if you want to know the requirements for your local government or your final destination. The Philippine Airlines website is hands down. They really have great information for travelers. Really good website. So I will put the link in the description box. Really good website. Even if you're not flying with them, you can get good information. However, if you really want to be sure, the best the best person or organization you can contact about the requirements would be your airline, because travel requirements change a lot or quite often, and the Philippine Airlines website may not be updated as quickly as they can. So it's still best to contact the airline you're flying with or your local government unit of your destination. I've actually arrived home. Yay, home sweet home. Now, is this all finished? Are you free? It depends. Now, there's this thing called 14 days provincial quarantine. It is not required by all provinces in the Philippines. Like, for example, if you're going home, if your final destination is Metro Manila, this is not required for Metro Manila. So when you only have to do 2 days of quarantine, which is great. Like 1 to 2 days of quarantine in your hotel and that's it. You reach your home and no more quarantine. However, there are actually quite a number of provinces or local government units that will require travelers coming from overseas, whether Filipino or foreign national, to undergo 14 days provincial quarantine. Arrive in your province, you just let them know that the barangay government or the city government that, hey, I came from the overseas, I just arrived home, what do I need to do? For some places, they only require home quarantine, so you can actually do your 14 days home quarantine in the comfort of your own home. However, there are places that would require you to do half 7 days in a government facility and then another half in your own home. Yeah, and there are others who actually want you to do it 14 days in a government facility. So the best thing is you should let your government or your barangay or city government know that you have arrived and you came from overseas. That's the right thing to do because it's really important. After your quarantine, or you didn't have to do your quarantine, that again up to the local government unit. Let's go to daily life in the Philippines. What's life like in the Philippines during the pandemic? Now, wearing a face mask is mandatory in the Philippines. In public, you have to wear a face mask. So if you're not used to wearing face mask and you want to go to the Philippines, you have to get used to it. And for some establishments, you would not be allowed entry if you're not wearing a face mask. So this is a must. You're going out, you need to bring a face mask. And you need to wear that at church and even at weddings, which looks kind of ridiculous, this picture. And also at birthday parties. And on top of your face mask, you also need to wear a face shield. A face shield is also mandatory to use in commercial establishments like shopping malls, public transport, and in some workplaces. And when it comes to lockdown and quarantine, the Philippines has taken some of the most hardline measures in the world. In fact, the Philippines has the longest community quarantine in the world. #1 in the world, longest. So there are different quarantine classifications in the Philippines. Different areas, different quarantine classifications. So President Duterte announced last November 30 that 6 destinations or 6 provinces will be under GCQ, or they call this General Community Quarantine. This is the restrictive one. However, the rest of the country will be under a less restrictive quarantine classification, which is the MGCQ, or the Modified General Community Quarantine. When it comes to reunions, this is a big thing in the Philippines, you know, big families. They're very family oriented. Family reunions is a big thing. However, the Philippine government consider family reunions to be a mass gathering. So they are discouraging large family reunions during the holiday season to prevent the sudden spike in COVID-19 cases in the country. And same with family reunions. Christmas caroling is also prohibited. And then this also is worth note-taking, especially if you have a minor child. No entry for minors in Metro Manila malls. So if you have a minor child under 15, they will not be allowed to enter shopping malls. The Interior and Local Government Secretary Eduardo Año clarified that minors are banned from going inside malls unless local government units pass an ordinance that would allow children to visit the said establishments. So minors are only allowed to go for exercise or essential reasons like check-up, going to the dentist. They're really strict. And if you did not know, the Philippines have closed all their schools. University, colleges, primary school, they're all closed. They're all doing it either online, blended learning, or just modules. They just have this printed stuff and they have to answer it. Now, despite these strict rules in the Philippines, social distancing is still a big challenge in the Philippines. Look at it. Yes, people are wearing masks, but there's no social distancing. Because the businesses there are just starting to bounce back, you know. Of course, they're working hard, and people want to go shopping. It's Christmas. You can't stop them from giving presents to each other. Now, let's go to tourism. Sounds nice. I know that foreign nationals want to go to the Philippines because of the nature of beautiful Philippines. No, international travel is still limited. International tourism is still closed. But the country is banking on their domestic tourism, encouraging Filipinos or foreign nationals who are already in the country to explore their own backyard, to explore the Philippines. So several destinations like Boracay, Baguio, Siargao, and Ilocos have opened their borders to local tourists under stringent protocols, meaning travel requirements. So if you want to go to Siargao or to Boracay, you will need to provide a negative PCR COVID test result prior to your travel. You will also need to provide a booking to a resort or hotel there. You also have to fill up a form. So there are requirements. So you need to get in touch with the local government unit of the destination. And when it comes to flights, good news is the Philippine Airlines, Cebu Pacific, have offered more flights, okay? Non-stop flights as government eases travel requirements. So the Philippine Airlines said, we are ready to do our part to serve our balikbayans and perk up the Philippine tourism industry to help sustain Filipino jobs and livelihoods. When it comes to COVID cases, the Philippines are actually getting better. If you look at the curve, it's actually going down. And then majority of the cases, close to 92%, are considered to be recovered, and then 6% are active and less than 2% have died. Currently, the cases is close to more than 400,000 cases now. And of course, safety is a big concern for those traveling to the Philippines, especially foreigners. I think that it would be best really to have a medical insurance just in case you can never tell. You catch COVID in the Philippines or things like that. It's really expensive. There are stories of actually Filipinos who was charged like 1 million pesos when they had a COVID. So I mean, hospitalization is not cheap in the Philippines. That's just what I want to say. Now, this is all for this video, friends. I hope that it helped you, give you clarity, or give you an overview of what you can actually expect in the Philippines. Thank you so much for watching and for your support. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you again. Bye!